how many worlds God has created or how many beings are on these other worlds. But isn't it a humbling thought to think this one world that has fallen away in sin is the one he's bending over, listening for that cry for help. And let's just see how he responds to the cry for help.
Sometimes referred to as the 8th continent of the world, this island nation is home to more indigenous species of plants and animals than anywhere else in the world.
I am in Madagascar, and this is AWR 360.
Today, I am traveling with Ray Allen and the local AWR workers to another remote village. Located far from where we were stationed in the capital city, we found a mission pilot willing to fly our team to the city nearest our destination. The views from 14,000 feet above the Madagascar mountains are amazing. Upon landing, we were greeted with another long car ride as we set off for the countryside. We are nearing our destination now and will soon see Ranja. Her story is different from any other I have ever heard, and I'm anxious to meet her and listen to her share more in person.
When I was 10 years old, I became possessed by evil spirits. My parents took me to a witch doctor and sold 10 cows for my healing, but nothing worked. When I was 16 years old, I realized new spirits were entering me, and they were worse than the first. They spoke to me in many Malagasy dialects. I saw them, but others could only hear them. When my first child was born, the spirit asked me to become a witch, and when I refused, they caused my baby to become sick and die. Distraught, I agreed to do what the spirit wanted if they would give us another child. 9 months later, a daughter was born. Over the next years, I became a powerful witch. I had no control over my own life, only doing what the spirits told me to do. Through the powerful medicine I concocted, many people were healed. Miracles were performed, and I became a valuable member of my community. I had power to make guns and bullets useless, and in turn my village became very wealthy because no one could steal our cows. One time, 27 armed men came to my house, but even though they tried to harm me with their weapons, they became powerless before me. I also had the ability to shut the mouths of crocodiles, and our once dangerous river became safe again. At one point, another set of spirits came into me. They were from the water and had power to heal the sick. They would take me to the bottom of a river, and there I would communicate with the spirits for days at a time, not even coming up to the surface to breathe. Even though I was very powerful, could heal people, shut crocodiles' mouths, and make bullets stop, I was miserable.
One day, Ranja met two young people that told her a curious thing. They said they prayed to God and gave him money in return for answering their prayers. Intrigued by this, Ranja went with them to church the next Sunday. She gave 1,000 Malagasy aria and waited, expecting God to answer her prayers, but nothing happened. The spirits continued to have control over Ranja's life, and she was often sick from their punishments. Just when she was about to give up on there being a God who cares, Ranja met a Seventh-day Adventist man. He told her about Jesus, the Sabbath, and gave her a Bible. Listening to this man brought peace to Ranja's heart, and she immediately started feeling better. The spirits were not happy, though, and warned Ranja that bad things would happen if she left them. Ranja decided to choose Jesus anyway, and the spirits kept their promise. Ranja's house burned down, and she lost everything to the flames. Angry neighbors accused her of bringing trouble upon herself and the whole village. The spirits tormented her day and night, discouraging her with such power that Ranja considered giving in and remaining a witch. But during this time, something happened that would change her life forever. Ranja discovered an AWR broadcast. This was just the encouragement she needed, and as she daily listened to the radio, her decision was made. She would follow Jesus no matter what. The spirits which had bound Ranja for so many years did not leave without a fight. They particularly did not like her listening to AWR and warned her to stop. But instead of heeding the spirits, she continued listening to her radio and found that as AWR played, the spirits had no control over her. Through much prayer, reading of scripture, and Adventist World Radio, the spirits left her once and for all, and she is now a free daughter of God. The nearest church to Ranja was 80 kilometers from her home, but undeterred, she made the journey. The pastor kindly studied with Ranja, and soon she was baptized into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Today, Ranja leads out in a church she helped build. An older woman now, but with energy and zeal beyond her years, Ranja encourages others that true freedom from demons comes only through Jesus Christ.
So much in my life has changed. I listen to AWR every day, and it has strengthened my faith and taught me many things. Miraculously, I am now able to read and write and love to share with others about Jesus and the life of freedom I now live.
Isn't it amazing how God is using the radio to penetrate through the ranks of darkness and is filling hearts with the light of His truth? Thank you for your generous support of the work of Adventist World Radio, the ministry with no walls, no borders, and no limits. From broadcast to baptism, this is AWR 360.
I don't know about you, but I have a little difficulty relating to that because we don't seem to have vivid demon possession here in the United States or Canada, but it is very alive in other parts of the world. And when you stop to think about it, Christ dealt with it on a daily basis when He was on this earth. So some people are experiencing the same thing, and so thankful to be delivered. And I'm going to share with you my last story. This is about how God led in the life of a young man from Nazareth. And you might think I'm going to be talking about the life of Christ who lived in Nazareth, but actually it's about a young Muslim boy. His name was Wisdom. And there is Wisdom as he's relating his life story to Adventist World Radio personnel. Wisdom, which is spelled W-I-S-A-M, Wisdom, excuse me, was born into a very wealthy Muslim family, lived in Nazareth. His father was the tribal leader of the Muslim group in Nazareth, And his uncle, his father's brother, was the religious leader, which they call the imam. And it was his responsibility to see that everybody continued to live according to the Quran and Sharia law. Well, Wisdom was chosen to replace his father when he was quite a young lad yet. And so he was made to memorize the Quran and become very familiar with Sharia law so that he would be well prepared to take his father's place in time. Well, Wisdom just wasn't feeling fulfilled. There was something about his life that just wasn't fulfilled. And when he was in his teenage years, he decided he's going to leave home, much to the disappointment of his parents and the great disappointment of his father. But he left home. And he got a job in a restaurant at a hotel in Nazareth, working with the cook, helping him cook. This is something that he'd never done before, so it was a new learning experience, and he quite rather enjoyed it and became very interested. And he said, this is where I learned to be humble, because I had to ask how to do something that I didn't know. I'd never done that before. I'd never had to ask before. And he developed a very good relationship with the head chef because of his interest. But in his early years, Wisdom had also become an expert at martial arts. And he had a reputation through the community of his expertise in martial arts. And one day, a man came into the restaurant and they said he wanted to speak to Wisdom. And he said, offered him to be the job of being his bodyguard, because he had learned of the expertise he had in martial arts. Well, as Wisdom talked to him, he detected and learned this man was associated with the Russian mafia. And so he refused. He just said, no, I don't want to do that. And the man pressured him and pleaded with him, or I don't know, pleaded with them, but tried to persuade him. And Wisdom just utterly refused. And so the man turned around and started walking out of the restaurant. But as he left, he called over his shoulder, I'm going to kill you. Well, one night, as Wisdom was leaving the restaurant and on his way home, all of a sudden he noticed there were 3 men standing down the street. And all of a sudden they pulled their guns and shot. Bang, bang, bang. Wisdom dropped to the ground. And the men thought that, hey, they had fulfilled their mission, that they had killed him, and they fled. 3 of the bullets hit him. 1 knocked him unconscious, but none of them killed him. The next thing he knew, he woke up at a hotel in a bed that was strange to him. And he asked, where am I? And they said, you're in such and such hotel. He'd never been to that hotel before. And they said, how did I get here? He said, some doctor found you lying in the street, bandaged up your wounds, and brought you here. And he's paid for 6 months of lodging and food and medical care. Wow. To this day, nobody knows who the doctor was, where he came from, or where he went to. Well, after a number of days, Wisdom healed and got feeling better, but he felt uncomfortable going out in the street again, of course, a little embarrassed to go home. And so he decided he's going to call home and talk to his mother. She would be more sympathetic to him than anybody else. So he dialed his mother the home phone, and his mother answered the phone. And she said, Wisdom, where are you? Your sister has been trying to get a hold of you. Here's her phone number. Call her. Well, his sister had decided to go to school in Austria. And so they talked for a while, and Wisdom told her what had happened. And she said, would you like to go to school in Austria? I know a nice school where you could study German, which would be very helpful when you take over the family business. And so he didn't know what else to do, and he said, yeah, I think I'll do that. She said, well, you get on a plane, fly into Salzburg, and then take such and such a train and get off at such and such a station. Well, he flew into Salzburg, and he said when he got into Salzburg and all the lights and all the people, it was nothing he'd ever seen before. But he found where he needed to buy his ticket for that particular train, got on the train, and away they went. They got to the station, and the conductor called out, "Station such and such." Well, this is where he needed to get off. So he got off the train onto the platform, and the train took off. It was dark. There were no lights around. And all he could see was a man on the platform walking towards him. And he walked up to him and said, "Hello, Wisdom," and gave him a hug. And Wisdom said, "That's the first hug I ever got from anybody in my life." But the man put him in his car and took him to his school. And the school happened to be Bogenhofen, which is our school in Austria, which is the theology training center for Austria and Germany. His sister had arranged for him to go to that school. Well, they put him in the dorm room, and the next morning he went to investigate or look out about registering in classes and so forth. And he learned it was a Christian school. And he was so happy. He thought, wow, God has put me in a Christian school. I'm going to convert all of these Christians to Islam. We'll have a Muslim school here in no time. He got his prayer rug out, and he thanked God for putting him in a Christian school. Well, the conversion of the students in the school to Islam, you can imagine how that went. Not very well. At first, they were very friendly to him, said, "We're glad you're here," and they talked with them and so on. And he would start persuading them to turn to Allah, to adopt the Quran, become Islam. And pretty soon, they just started shying away from him. They wouldn't sit with them. And then he got angry and he started shouting on them, "If you don't turn to Allah and the Quran, you're going to burn in hell." And so the students went to the administration and said, "You need to do something with this boy, or we're going to drop out of school. We're going to leave. We just don't want to deal with him." So they called his sister and told her what he was doing. So she called him and said, "Wisdom, what are you doing? What's going on?" She said, "I'm trying to convert them to the Quran like I'm supposed to." Well, she says, "Stop it. Just stop it. Just settle down. Study your German lessons and your classes. Get ready to write your exam afterwards, because otherwise they're going to throw you out. What are you going to do then?" Well, he didn't have a very good answer to that question, so he said, "Okay, I'll settle down and I'll study." And he settled down and started studying and doing very well, getting ready to prepared to write his exams. And then one day, a woman walked up to him and said, "Hello, Wisdom. How's your sister?" And he said, "You know my sister?" "Oh, yes, I know your sister. How's her boyfriend?" "My sister has a boyfriend?" "Yes, and he's studying to be a pastor." "My sister's become a Christian?" And he just came unglued. And he called his sister, and he hollered at her and turned to Christian. She says, "Wisdom, I have found the true Jesus, and I'm never going back to the Quran." Well, he says, "You know what has to happen to you? You have to die." She says, "Yes, I know." He says, "Well, I'm going to call the parents. I'm going to tell them." She said, "Fine, you do what you have to do." So he called his parents, told them what had happened to his sister, and they said, "Okay, we'll have a tribal meeting. We'll call you back." And so they had a tribal meeting, and they decided she needs to die, and that Wisdom was the one to kill her. So they called him back and said, "The tribal meeting has decided your sister must die, and you've been chosen to kill her." And he said, "Okay." And that weighed heavy on his mind. How am I going to kill my sister? What is the best way to do this? And it just kind of weighing heavy on his mind. He had been given a job working in the garden. And one day when he was out in the garden, he was a little bit tired, so he sat under a tree to rest a while, and he fell asleep. And he had this dream. There's a big bright light appeared and said, "Wisdom, you are mine." And then the theology teacher at the school walked up to him with an orange in his hand and said, "An orange from Israel, take it." That happened 3 times. He woke up, but he fell asleep again. That happened 3 times. And the last time, the big bright light said, "Don't be afraid, you are mine." And then the theology teacher walked up and said, "An orange from Israel, take it." Well, Muslims, they put a lot of stock in dreams. And he said, what does this dream mean? What does it mean? And in the Quran, it also tells them that they should go to the people of the book to learn about the book, which of course is the people of the Bible. So he said, I will talk to that theology teacher and I will tell him, if I tell you about Allah and the Quran, will you tell me about your God and the book? And the theology teacher said, yeah, I'll be glad to do that. In his mind, Wisdom was thinking, I'm going to convert this theology teacher to Islam, and then that'll be the breakthrough, and I'll convert to school. Well, that's not the way it went. When Wisdom learned about the truth about who Jesus is, he is the Son of God, and he died for you to pay for your sins, and he's coming again to redeem you. That filled a spot in his life that had never been filled before. And he became a Christian. Then, instead of killing his sister, he went and celebrated at her wedding with her. And that's when he learned that the man who met him on the platform was his sister's boyfriend. But now he needed to deal with home. So he called home and told his parents, the first thing they asked him is, have you killed your sister? And he said, no, not yet. I need to come home. And they said, okay, come home. Well, the first thing they did was put him on trial. Said, are you reading the Quran every day? Are you praying 5 times a day? And Wisdom responded and said, do you know who the true Jesus is? And then his uncle, the imam, said, stone him. And so his cousins picked up stones and started throwing stones at him. One hit him on the head and he went down. And his father said to his brother, save your brother. And so his brother went and laid over top of him and they stopped stoning him. But he had to go to the hospital. And after several days, he came out. And his father said, you know, you didn't have a fair trial. We need to have another trial. And you need to present why you're not believing in the Quran anymore. This time he said, I'll have my Bible there, and I will read them to the Bible who Jesus is. Well, you know, the Muslims believe that Jesus is coming again, and he's going to bring peace to the world. But it also said, if anyone says he's the Son of God, that person is an infidel, and he must die. Well, Wisdom was there. He opened his Bible, and he read to them that Jesus is the Son of God, and his uncles shouted out, stone him! And so they started throwing stones at him a second time. And a second time he went down, and a second time his father called to his brother, save your brother! And his brother laid over him and saved him again. His father told the rest of them, you get away, everybody leave. We will decide as a family what we're going to do. So again, they had to take him to the hospital. When he came out, his father sat down with him and said, Wisdom, if you don't turn back to Islam and the Quran, they will kill you. And Wisdom said, I can never go back to the Quran. I have found the true Jesus. So his family said, you have to leave or they will kill you. So he decided he would go back to Bogenhoven and take religion classes and become a pastor. Well, he started getting letters from the other members of his family threatening him and telling him, we will kill you. And so he said, I'm not safe here. I need to get out of here. So he decided to go to South Africa, where nobody would know where he was. There he met a nice Adventist family that also had a pretty daughter. And when they learned that he wanted to be a pastor, they said, you need to go to the United States and get your theology. And what they were thinking of, you get your theology, then you go to Andrews University, the seminary, and so on. So he came to the United States, went to Southern Adventist University, got his theology degree, but then he decided to go back to South Africa, marry that pretty daughter, and settle down. He got a job as a pastor, and in a few years they had a beautiful daughter, and life was going on very nicely. And after a number of years, he gets a phone call from his mother. He said, I didn't have contact with my family for at least 5 years or more. I never heard a word from any one of them. And suddenly I get this phone call. And she said, Wisdom, I want you to come home, back home. He said, your uncle that wanted you dead has died. Your father has passed away. And I think it's safe for you to come back home. So he said, well, Mother, if I come back home, I'm still going to have to teach about the true Jesus. And she said, that's fine. You do what you have to do, but please come back home. So he moved his family back to Nazareth. She gave him a job in the business to begin with. He had a good job. He had good income. And he started teaching computer classes for the Muslim children. And he was quite good at computers, and they enjoyed it. And they enjoyed it so much they actually moved his class into the schoolroom and made it part of the curriculum. And his wife started teaching cooking classes for the Muslim ladies. They're also very interested in health, and so they appreciated that. And things were going along quite well. Then one morning, his wife Audrey was upstairs in the bedroom, and she heard a commotion downstairs. And she looked out of the window, and she seen his two cousins there, confronting and arguing with Wisdom, and one had a long knife in his hand. And she said, oh, he's in trouble. She dropped to her knees and started praying. Said, Lord, I'm struggling with a bit of a cough here. You have to save him. Well, after arguing with them, and of course you can't reason with a mindset of the Muslim like that at a time like that. So he turned to walk away from him, and the cousin with the knife went to jab him in the back. They're taught to strike upwards and inwards towards the kidney area. And as he struck, here is what happened. The knife went in his shirt at that point, then turned around and came out at another point, about 5 inches from there, and never touched his skin. Wow. And that is a stainless steel knife of high quality stainless steel. Wisdom gave, that's President of Adventist World Radio, Dwayne McKee, showing us last weekend in Port Charlotte the shirt, and allowed us to take a picture of the knife to show you this is truly a true story. Okay, that is a stainless steel knife. Stainless steel does not bend. If you can exert enough pressure on it, it will break, but it will not bend. Well, that's what happened. And his brother then shouted at his cousins, you get out of here and you don't ever come back. And as they were leaving, they shouted over their shoulder, someday, Wisdom, you don't know when, you don't know where, but we will kill you. And so his brother and some other family members and friends said, we need to get together and go over and kill those cousins because they will kill you if we don't. Wisdom said, no, nobody's going to kill anybody. God will fight for us. Well, about 2 weeks later, those cousins were on a motorcycle driving, and they went around this corner and head-on collision with a truck. One died on the scene instantly. The other one several days later without regaining consciousness. When that story hit the Muslim world, it was like you can imagine the impact it had on the Muslim world. Several businessmen came to Wisdom and said, we want to know about this God that fights for you. Well, Wisdom asked the family if he could attend the funeral of the cousins. They said, yeah, you can. So he went to the funeral of the two cousins who had been trying to kill him more than once. Today, Wisdom and his family are in Nazareth. He has a job as a pastor there. His wife is still teaching cooking classes to the school. And he has decided he's going to start an English class for the young Muslim children. And you know what he's using for a textbook? The Bible. And even though all of the Muslim families know what he's doing, he's using the Bible as a textbook, he has a waiting list of students, young children, that want to get into his English class.
Amen.
I thank you for coming. I trust and hope that you've been inspired by what we've shared with you this evening. There are a lot of things going on. It's hard to put something like this together because it's hard to know which stories to use and which stories not to use. There are many other stories we could share with you, but we trust that you have been blessed this evening. Thank you very much for coming.